Have you ever wondered what happened to the good old days of gaming, where when a game would launch, it would functionally work and you wouldn't have to worry about whether it was playable, whether you got the right version, or whether or not it was worth your time to even invest into it? Like when you were a kid and you finally cracked open the new Final Fantasy, you saw all 3 discs there. You knew that was a complete game. You didn't have to worry about anything. It seems that as of late, games haven't been launching in the best states. Take a look at games like Diablo III, No Man's Sky, Fallout 76, Anthem, New World, hell, even the Battlefield 2042 beta, Cyberpunk, and how they launched, and ask yourself, are these quality launches? And the answer is no. No, they have not. A bunch of them had super rocky launches. A few of them have recovered. I think we know which one that one is. It's No Man's Sky. And one of them still has a chance to redeem themselves. I'm looking at you, DICE. Well, now that that's over, let's get down into some of the nitty-gritty, shall we? To start off this little recap, we're going to start with Diablo 3. As many of you may or may not remember, I don't know how many of you are PC gamers, but this game when it launched was unplayable. Everybody was plagued with Error 37 and nobody knew what that meant. A bunch of people took to the forums and tried to figure it out, but with no luck. Eventually they finally got all their shit sorted, but that took a while. And nobody could even play the game because it required to be always online. And that was the first one that's done that. And that really screwed a lot of people over. A lot of people with poor access to internet and just didn't feel like playing a single player game online. Which ties into the second point, the auction house. In a game all about grinding for the best loot, they had an auction house where you could pay either in-game gold or real money. Real money. It was the very definition of pay to win, and that rubbed a lot of people just the wrong way and turned them off from the Diablo franchise forever. Then there's No Man's Sky. Oh boy, where do I begin about No Man's Sky? Well, I could probably start with telling you that a lot of people just called it No Man's Lie, from where the developers lied about the scope of the game, about all its procedural generated worlds, and the scale was just off. Everything was just vast, but it was empty. They promised there would be multiplayer, and you would never see another person online. People actually had to go in and test this, because like, oh, yeah, the universe is so big you just don't see other players. They had people in the exact same spots. It wasn't a procedural generation. It was a set map that was made with procedural generation. That was the big lie, and the whole goal was to get to the center of the galaxy. And once people got to the center of the galaxy, they got a slap in the face and said, oh yeah, here's a light, flash, do it all again. Fallout 76 was a game that came right off the heels of Fallout 4 that just released not too long before, so everybody still wanted even more Fallout. Well, they sure got some. When it launched, it was a buggy nightmare. You had items falling through the world, people abusing the nuclear launch codes, weird item duplication to things going missing. And since that was sort of an MMO, it was all online and there wasn't anything you could do about it because it was always online. It ran like garbage. It was not a great game. Now they have made some effort to fix it, but I don't know how many people still play that game. I'm personally friends with a few streamers that just can't play it anymore. They're tired of it. There's nothing there. It just did not feel like Fallout to them, so they stopped. Cyberpunk 2077 should sit fresh in a lot of gamers' minds for multiple reasons. Most of which showing that a big marketing budget does not equal a great game. With all the promises made, all the hype they built for years and years and years, even got Keanu Reeves on board to play a character, and it was just a crash and burn. It was a nightmare to try and play. I watched several streamers try to stream it, if they could even get more than 10 minutes into the game without crashing. A few of the streamers even had a ticker on the side of their screen that showed how many bugs they had that session, and some of them got well into the hundreds. And featuring the AI being completely brain dead, where the cops would just spawn out of nowhere and try to arrest you. The bribe feature wasn't working. The cars didn't act right. If you hit the invisible Legos, you'd send your car flying or totally destroy itself. The world was pretty sparse and barren, with feeling like there was only 15 to 16 NPCs spawned at any given time, no matter if you're on console or PC. Speaking of console, The Cyberpunk Edition Xbox that they made to commemorate the game would not even run it. So overall, most of the features that were promised weren't there. The world just didn't feel right. It felt empty and not like it was a bustling metropolis like it was supposed to be. And it even led PlayStation to completely pulling it off the PlayStation Store until all these issues were resolved. The Battlefield 2042 beta was also wrought with problems from the very start, and that's for those people that could even get into it. I myself downloaded the entire thing only to be denied playing it. I later saw that they were sending out the wrong versions to a couple different people. If you watch the Ackman's video on it, he got sent the Xbox One version of it while he's playing on a Series X. In general, it looks pretty much the same as Battlefield 3 and 4, only with a lot more graphical issues and runnability issues. Between the screen flickering every 10 seconds, the ladder animations looked like they came straight out of the 90s. If you got in a multi-person vehicle by yourself, you were fine, but the second somebody spawned on you or jumped in the vehicle, it developed a stutter that was just horrid. Overall, the beta just looked disappointing, and I know I'm not the only one that thinks that. A lot of people canceled their pre-orders over it, and quite frankly, I don't blame them if that is what they're going to put out a month before release and say, hey, this is what you got in a month. Of course people are going to cancel their pre-orders. It looked and ran like garbage. And finally, we come to New World, the whole reason I made this video, and it's fresh on my mind. From a business point of view, the game did pretty well. It pulled a lot of numbers and probably set a whole lot of records. Last I checked, there was 400,000 concurrent players. But as far as public reception of the game, it is at an all-time low. Players are having a mass exodus from the broken economy to the game itself being broken, and there doesn't seem like there's any clear end in sight for it. See, it all started out with the world cap issues, with a world cap of 2,000 players per server, roughly about 30 to 40 servers per region. Well, that got overloaded hella quick, in some cases leading to queues longer than the maximum supported number of players on the server, which means they had to open up temporary extra servers for all the extra people that wanted to play. But now that everybody's leaving, most of the worlds are just sparse and dead, which in a game designed as a PvP MMO is not the thing you want to have happen, especially with everything in the economy being player driven. If nobody's playing the game, nobody's farming resources, and therefore nobody can buy the resources that the lower level players would have had, to where it almost feels like a giant pyramid scheme in the long run. Not only that, when it launched, there were some pretty bad bugs in it. People could go invincible during all the big PvP missions by minimizing the screen to a window and just dragging the window around. You were unkillable. Some people figured out if you lagged the other player with massive amounts of AoEs, they couldn't do anything. You could sit there and shoot the fish in a barrel. The few people that blasted to 60 and made it to the in-game content found they couldn't close the rifts, so they couldn't get all the resources they need to do the high-end dungeons. And with coin being so scarce, a lot of people found ways to duplicate the money. They came out and said it's not client priority, but it sure as hell feels and acts like it. And the end game is completely in shambles. There is no end game. It's you keep farming up the same resources, and then that's it. That's all you've got. You try and hold control of the territory for whatever faction you're with, and just pray to God you keep it, because whoever's the company leader that trolls that area, they choose who fights in the battles. It's just not an open world event that everybody can participate in. So after listening to all that, I bet you're asking yourself, yeah, why are games coming out in such a broken state now? Well, I've got a few theories on this. First one is just plain up corporate greed. They're trying to rush games out to make as much money as possible, and it's affecting all the game launches and negatively impacting gamer reception as a whole. There's only so many times you can cash out on your company's good name or gamers' goodwill. Like Cyberpunk, they had the entire world behind them because of how well they did with the Witcher series, and they just flubbed it. Could also be from just general lack of resources, where the developers aren't given the time, money, or personnel to be able to effectively make the game that they want to make, that they promise to make, and at the end, the consumer ends up paying for it. Some companies have publicly said that they did not expect that many players to play the game, so they didn't build it for that amount of traffic. But I think sometimes it just falls back on the other two. In the end, we never may actually know why the games are just coming out nowadays, and that's just the status quo, as much as I hate to say it and I refuse to accept it. So that's why I wait for reviews to come out. If it's going to be a buggy, shitty launch, I'm just going to wait, or I'm not going to buy it. Well, Anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. Use that to inform your own opinion. If you guys have stuck around this far, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or critiques of it, I'm always open to hear it. This is my first time editing a video. I don't know how well it's going to be received, but if you did watch, thank you. This has been Overkill, over and out.